To begin, let me just tell you a little bit about Accountability Lab. We make governance work for people, generally. And our work is divided into three buckets, or our programs are divided into three buckets. We have communities, which works with communities. Currently in Zimbabwe, we work in Blair, Tulusa, and Harare. And we're helping communities in those areas find solutions to the public service issues that they are facing. So things like water, things like refuse collection. And we do this through CivAct. So we've set up feedback mechanisms. We are asking communities about what is happening with them, and then we're feeding back that information and helping those communities to create platforms for engagement that are effective. Our second bucket of work is Accountability Lab knowledge. And that is where we are doing research, and we are trying to better understand the challenges that people are facing. And then our final bucket of work is campaigns, such as Integrity Icon, where we are working with public servants to build greater accountability in public institutions. So far, so good? Okay. Now to the main event. Blair, Glencorse. Accountability Lab began as a conversation between Blair and young people in Nepal about the challenges that they were facing and how they were feeling about being able to move forward and to create the kind of country, the kind of environment that they wanted. It's been, is it 12 years?
Just 10 years.
10 years.
Just on 10 years.
Yeah, of course. It's been a 10-year journey. And we are here now, we're here today. And Blair is going to talk to us a little bit more about what that journey has been like and how we want to build forward and to create progress for all of us. With that, please go ahead.
Thank you, Penny. And welcome, everybody. As Penny mentioned, we can make this a conversation. I can perhaps begin with a few remarks, and then I would love to answer any questions, or if there's anything in particular that you're interested in, I'm happy to talk about it. My name is Blair, and I'm from the UK, as you might be able to hear. But it's great to be back in Zimbabwe. I lived here 24 years ago in Bulawayo for a year, and so I'm a big fan of this country and of the incredible people in Zimbabwe. So I thank you for hosting me again this week, and also thank you to you in the media for the important job that you do every day. So I can tell you a bit more about what we're doing with Accountability Lab globally. As Eupenio mentioned, we're 10 years old, and I think there are really three things that make us interesting, perhaps, to you. One is that we are all about building positive narratives. So much of what we hear is negative these days, all around the world. You know, there are so many problems that we all face in our communities. And while I think we need to identify challenges, what we are all about is identifying solutions and of celebrating good people and the right kinds of behaviours in our societies, because we believe that change begins with all of us individually. So if we can shift behaviours and shift expectations of what is needed and what is expected in society, then perhaps we can begin to change things. We can wait for other people to do that, or we can do it ourselves. And there are good people everywhere that are doing important, positive things. And the Integrity Icon campaign, and you can see the picture of our icons behind us, is a campaign to celebrate honest government officials and people within the Zimbabwean government who are doing the right things, and there are many of them. These are civil servants on the front lines who are improving education or healthcare or other sectors, and we want to show that they are doing the right things, and by highlighting them, try and encourage others to do the same. So that's one big part of what we do. And I think it's beginning to create different kinds of conversations here and in many other countries around the world about integrity and about the role that civil servants can play. We also, as Upenny mentioned, are working in communities with other local organisations to really solve problems. And again, this comes from an understanding that complaining is perhaps a starting point, but really what we need are solutions. And there are many amazing community organisations and power holders in communities that are willing to fix problems. So how do we identify those people? How do we connect them together? How do we collect the information that can help inform decision making in important ways? And then use all of that to demonstrate what is possible, so that hopefully other communities can see that and can do similar things. And a third big piece of I think what we're really interested in is building what we call unlikely networks. Often the development space in particular is filled with the usual suspects. It's a lot of the same kind of people, and they are often people that have amazing expertise. But we think we need to diversify and open up this conversation and this process of engagement to a much larger and different kind of audience. So we work with musicians and filmmakers and other creative young people in particular who have amazing ideas and who understand their role in society. We want to amplify their voices and make sure that everyone's voices are included and heard as part of the process of decision making. So young people in particular are the constituency that we work with. And then, as Penny touched upon, we're really a learning organisation. What we want to do is learn about these things and share that learning with others, so that it's not just us working in isolation, but it's helping to inform all of the people in Zimbabwe who are interested in pushing for a future that we all want to see, and for creating the right kinds of initiatives in their communities in collaboration with governments and people in power. So it's really exciting. We I think are exactly 2 years old now in Zimbabwe, and it's just great for me to be back here and to see what's happening and to eat some amazing Zimbabwean food and to talk to people like yourselves who are telling the stories that matter in this country and trying to support the good people and the right solutions to these problems. So let me leave it there to begin with. I'm very happy to answer specific questions and also to tell you a bit more about myself or what the Accountability Lab does in other countries as well, if that's of interest to you. Thank you.
Probably, if you give us a rundown of what you've done so far in Zimbabwe before we go, we ask about other countries. In the past, is it 2 years, you say?
Sure. So in Zimbabwe, one of the programs that we started with was Voice to Rip, which falls under Arts for Change. And Arts for Change is our creative activism arm that also incorporates filmmakers in the Film Fellowship. And so in 2020, they released an album called Freedom. And it's basically bringing young people together to create messages and to talk about the issues that are concerned in their communities, the accountability issues. So on the album, there's a really great song called Freedom. They're talking about things like governance challenges, young people's aspirations, and how they want to be part of the conversation about what is Zimbabwe, where is Zimbabwe going. They're also making films about, the girl child and the issues that are affecting the girl child. Remember that 14-year-old girl who died in Malawi? So issues like that, there's a great concern. The next program that we launched was the Accountability Incubator. which works with young social entrepreneurs. We actually have a couple in the room who have their media entities that they've established. And what we're doing is to help them grow their ideas for change in communities. So, yeah. And then the next campaign, the next thing that we launched in Zimbabwe was Integrity Icon, which is this campaign here, which we work with public servants to name and fame. We work with citizens to name and fame public servants who are doing good and creating greater accountability in their institutions. And so it's not just about somebody who shows up at work, but it's about somebody who's creating accountability and creating change for ordinary citizens. Because sometimes, you go to the passport office, you can't get your passport, but somebody who's there dedicated to that work. So yeah, roughly. And then Blair, do you want to talk about the global work?
Absolutely, and we do many of these things globally in a number of different countries, mostly in Africa, South Asia, but also Mexico. And the approach is broadly the same, the campaigns are broadly similar. We've worked in universities with young people in different ways. We've also worked at the international level on advocacy efforts and policy change sort of initiatives around accountability and youth leadership and training and that sort of thing. In this region, we work in South Africa as well, and are doing a variety of similar things there. We're now, through the Integrity Icon campaign, running a Meet the Icons effort whereby citizens can meet some of the icons and talk to them about their experiences within government. We're also working with the media there and trying to build out a support program, again, for young journalists and narrative builders and storytellers in communities to talk about the challenges they face and how the South African government might address those. So collectively, it's an effort to really support the younger generation to understand their rights and to develop the skills that they need to participate fully in their societies. With the hope that 30 or 40 years from now, when all of you are in positions of authority within your institutions and within society, you have collectively created the kind of country and the kind of world that we all want to live in. So it's a long-term approach. It's very collaborative. It's very solutions-oriented, and so far, I think here in Zimbabwe we've found a lot of interest and a lot of engagement with what we're doing, and we're really excited to grow this over the next coming years as well and see what we can do.
One of the things we're really proud of is CivActs, Civic Action Teams, which is our community, it falls under the community bucket of programming. And there we're working with communities to find solutions to the challenges that they face. So we go into a community, we ask them what's going on, we do community listening meetings, and people are just talking to us about, well, there's road infrastructure, there's this clinic that's not working, and then we collate that information, and then we go out into the actual community. So we have luminators, CFAs, Community Frontline Associates, who are in communities, then talking to people about that challenge to gather more information and to better understand it. And while we're doing that, we're also identifying people who are making decisions about that community. So things like the ward councillor, the chief sometimes, power holders, right? And then we have conversations with those people about what we're finding. So the data from that, we're then sharing it with them, we're sharing it with the community to find out how it is that, how they feel about the data and what it is reflecting back to them. And then from that, we are creating solutions. So, yeah, that's something for yes.
I want to ask in relation to the Integrity Icon program beyond Zimbabwe globally. Your insights, are you finding more people holding maybe lower or higher positions in government being named and famed by the general public, or it's usually the lower people? And if there are countries which are standing maybe in difference to most countries, which are those countries which are maybe naming maybe higher people holding higher positions rather than lower positions?
That's a very interesting question. The intention of the campaign is to name and fame really local level people with integrity. There are often within governments people higher up in government who are quite well known for having integrity, but they are already well known. And what we want to try and do with this campaign is show that there are ordinary people just like us who are working every day within government to improve services and deliver for citizens and to make values-based decisions. So the intention is to name and fame lower level frontline government officials. So it tends to be teachers and nurses and local government officials, park rangers, firemen, policemen, all of those sorts of people at a very local citizen-facing level. And I think that's the way it's been here in Zimbabwe. Maybe then you can talk more about some of the other people that were nominated that perhaps weren't celebrated. And we get lots and lots of nominations. Often when we start this campaign in other countries, people say to us, you'll never find that many honest government officials. But that's not true. We just started this campaign in Somaliland, for example, which is part of Somalia. And this year we've had over 1,500 nominations already in just a few weeks. So people are very excited to nominate honest government officials. There are a lot of those people that exist. The problem is that often that is not the perception, or these people are not recognised for the good work that they do. So this campaign is, of course, all about celebrating them and recognising them. But there are some countries where societies can be quite hierarchical, and some government officials don't feel like they can take credit because it should go to their superiors. So Pakistan, for example, is a country where I've spent a lot of time, and that is the case there. People tend to nominate more senior people because of that dynamic, and that's great. But what we're really looking for is people on the front lines. But what's great about this campaign is it also allows some of these winners to supercharge their trajectory within government and to be promoted and to then get in higher positions of power where they can begin to influence things in really interesting ways. For example, one of the nominees in Mali was a justice ministry official, and after he won the Integrity Icon campaign, the government made him the Minister of Justice, and they said, it's because we saw this campaign and we knew he was a man of integrity, and that is the kind of person that we want to be running our Ministry of Justice. So that's a really good example of how this campaign can really supercharge the career of a public servant that has integrity. In Pakistan, there was another example of a winner who was a district officer in one district in a province called Punjab. And as soon as he won, he got a call from the chief minister, who's like the governor of the province, and he said, what job would you like in the province? I'll give you any job because I know that you are a person of integrity and you're going to work on behalf of citizens to improve our society. So those are the sorts of exciting outcomes that can begin to happen, and we'll see what happens here in Zimbabwe. But I'd encourage all of you and anyone listening or watching or reading to please nominate honest government officials or begin to think about who it is in your community within government that is doing the right thing, because we would love to hear about them, we'd love to tell their story, we'd love to celebrate them, because they are really important people, I think, globally. And part of what we're trying to do now is connect those people across countries as well, to share ideas and to support each other and to learn and grow together, because often they don't always have the networks that they might need to do those things. So that's another exciting part of what we're trying to do within Zimbabwe, but also more broadly.
To add to what Blair is saying, one of the things to remember is that Integrity Icon is powered by people. So it's not just about the public servants, it's also about us too. It's about the people who are in our communities that we see every day. So all of these people have neighbors and clients and people who they have worked with and served in their communities who have said, yes, I nominate this person. And that's really important because we would not have noticed them. So while we manage the process or we help to coordinate the process, we do not drive the process. The nominations actually come from ordinary people. More than that, it's ordinary people who are saying that, for instance, Ms. Matole takes time out of her day to make sure that the students that she's teaching are also learning on a full stomach, because you can't learn when you're hungry, right? Those things are very, very important because that is how then the icons are chosen and selected. It's not just the fact of saying this person should be an integrity icon, but also us then thinking about how is it that this person is creating integrity or building their institution or improving their community, and then bringing that to the campaign when they do the nomination. And then the touch points for people to interact with integrity icon go beyond just the nomination process. It's also the voting, and it's also watching the documentaries and having the conversation about what does integrity really mean to us? What do we mean when we say accountability? What do we mean when we say we want good public servants in Zimbabwe? We want institutions that work. And so that's the work that we're trying to do.
If there's one, okay. There have been concerns in recent times by CSOs on the suggested or proposed preview review. Do you think this is going to affect your work, or you're okay with it? You feel like that?
It will, well, the bill has yet to be passed, so we don't know the final points of the law yet. But it will undoubtedly affect our work because we are a CSO operating within the boundaries of the Republic of Zimbabwe. I cannot at this stage give comment to how it will affect the work, but when the law is passed, we will comply with it.
Maybe just to address this question, what do you think of this law? I know it has not been passed, but what do you think of it?
What do I think of it? I think where it makes our work easier, I will always embrace that. I think it's very good to have regulation and to have laws that protect the people. And where we have a little bit of conflict, we're currently in a conversation now engaging with the Ministry of Justice and members of Parliament about what parts of that bill might adversely affect us. And hopefully we will have a fruitful conversation with them.
And as I mentioned, our approach it's collaborative. We are all about finding solutions, we are all about making friends, we are all about lifting up good people. We're not conflictual, we're not in any way trying to change things without buying from everyone that is needed, and in ways that reflect the ways that everyone wants things to change, and some of that may be legal, it may be otherwise, but I think the general approach is the government might set certain criteria or operate through certain institutions, but we're all about supporting individuals to make value-based decisions and to support the development of their own understanding and rights and skills, and thinking through how they can be a person of integrity, and that's possible whatever the political and legal environment, I think, globally, and so it's a very collaborative long-term effort to create the sorts of countries that we might like to live in. And individual laws, I don't think in the long run will affect that that idea or that approach.
It's Richard and then Teresa. Did you have a question as well?
No, I have a question.
Oh, you had one. Thank you. So Richard, that's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Ruby. So as Accountability Lab, you have been pushing conversations around how you can then use translocal networks as an alternative to governance. So from your global experience, how has that worked, and what has been the challenges that you have faced, and how have you dealt with those challenges?
That's a great question. I could explain briefly what a translocal network is, because that could be a little bit of a technical word, but what it really means is that we are a network of local organisations across a number of different countries that share values and ideas and learning, and are close or proximate to the kinds of challenges that we are trying to solve. So Accountability Lab Zimbabwe is here in Zimbabwe, but we have, as I mentioned, accountability labs in South Africa or Mali or Pakistan or other places, and they are part of this learning and sharing network because we think the best ideas come from the bottom up and come from communities and come from citizens. But every context is different, and there are different things that we can learn in those different places. And if we can help to coordinate the sharing of those ideas and the reflection on those ideas, and as I mentioned, build networks across countries in really interesting ways, that could provide a different basis for how we collectively move forwards and how we develop our countries. That is a little bit different maybe to some of the more traditional ways that international organisations, for example, have operated, where they would have a headquarters and then they would have subsidiaries or local offices of that international entity. Our way of operating is a bit different. It's very flat. We are all colleagues that come together and share and learn, and it's not hierarchical. And I think that means we hopefully trust each other more and are more willing to engage in constructive ways. So that's what we've been building. As I mentioned, we now work in 13 different countries, and that is challenging. Of course, there are many different problems in these different contexts. There's all sorts of issues with how we organise ourselves and how we fund ourselves and how we govern ourselves and the systems that we're building. But one of the reasons I'm in Zimbabwe is because last week we brought all of our directors from all of these local labs together for a strategic retreat to talk about how we work together, and we picked Zimbabwe because it's a beautiful place. Everybody wanted to visit, and because our team here are doing such interesting things, and there's so much engagement around our work, and so many networks that we're building, that we wanted to see that in practice and allow some of our other friends from other countries to see that as well. So we went to visit, for example, one of our film fellows. Penny mentioned the Film Fellowship, who lives in a community outside Victoria Falls and has made a film about the role of women in gender rights. And so we watched that film and we talked with her and her community about those kinds of issues. We also visited one of the participants in the Incubator program that we mentioned, who has developed a radio show and is supporting local artisans to build income streams by selling their goods and engaging in constructive ways in their community. So it was fantastic, and there's so much that the world can learn from what's happening in Zimbabwe, and we wanted to demonstrate that. So there are challenges, but I think we're also showing that there are solutions, and there are new and really interesting ways of doing things that everybody can learn from.
Donato?
I think my question is a bit similar to Richard, but I think considering that you are a translocal organization, can you share any insights that might be beneficial in relation to how different all these 30 institutions are, maybe geographically, those in Asia, those in Africa, those in Europe, if there are any key insights, maybe from the ones that were being shared from your meeting last week with the directors and stuff.
That's a great question. We talked a lot about lessons across the different accountability labs last week, And there are a lot of shared challenges, but there are also a lot of shared emerging ideas or themes as well, I think. I touched on a few of the challenges in response to the last question. We need to think about our systems and our governance and our processes, and in terms of programs, how we deepen our programming, how we can build and engage networks around everything we do. Here, for example, the Film Fellowship is a big part of what we do, but in some other countries they haven't tried to do that yet. So we talked about how they could do it. The same is true for the Voice to Rep music campaign. There are some other countries that would like to replicate that, but have not done it yet. So we were talking a bit about how those sorts of things can happen. We also talked about themes that we are interested in, that touch on accountability issues, but are a little bit different or overlap. So gender is one, for example, the role of women in society. You know, we're strong proponents of women's role in decision making and in society. Climate change is another big one that's affecting all of us. So how do we account for that? How do we organise ourselves to address that issue? I think inclusion more broadly was a big one. How do we make sure all voices are heard, not just of women, but of all kinds of people in decision making in their communities and in different ways? How do we build intergenerational relationships? So young people are our focus, but we want to bring everyone into this conversation and understand how older generations are also thinking about these kinds of issues. So there's lots and lots of different things. We're going to be writing a few blogs about that process, so we will definitely share those with you in a week or two when they're ready. But I think what I was most excited about is, and I feel it here with our Zimbabwe team as well, is the energy around all of this and the commitment to our values and to the kind of change that we're trying to create. As I said at the beginning, it's very easy sometimes to get depressed about everything in the world at the moment. You know, it's difficult economic times. We've had COVID, there's war going on. You know, there are lots of bad decisions that are being made globally, but we can point fingers at those people and we can say everything's going wrong and hold up our hands and say there's nothing we can do, or we can try and say, well, maybe we're part of the solution, even if it's in very small ways, to these kinds of problems. And if we are, then what can we do in small ways or bigger ways to try and change these dynamics and to create hope and inspire other people to shift some of these decisions. So really that was what got me most excited, because I think our Translocal network of accountability labs is doing that, and they are inspiring others, and they are providing resources to others that need them, and providing skills and ideas that can really be impactful over time. So we're hoping to continue that for the future as well.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I had a question.
Yes.
Yeah, like in Zimbabwe, what mechanisms or processes are you currently using to identify communities that actually nominate public officials for the Incubator Award?
Sorry, go ahead. Could you repeat the question?
Like, what mechanisms are you using currently in Zimbabwe to identify communities that nominate public officials for the Incubator Award?
Oh, it's open to, nomination is open to the whole country. So if, for our first year of Integrity Icon, because we were piloting it, we were testing to see if the idea worked, if people were interested in doing it. We limited it to the 4 areas that we work in with communities. So Harare, Chitungwiza, Blair, and Koromonzi. And then we further limited the nominations to teachers and nurses. But this year's nominations were open to the whole country. So it didn't matter if you were in Harare, Mzarabani, Shachane, or Kokwe North. You were able to nominate anyone, and you were able to nominate a person who worked for the government. So by definition, that's any public servant, whether it's an accountant in the Ministry of Agriculture or an agri-tax officer or a nurse, a teacher, a doctor, anyone. So there was no, because what we want to do is to celebrate people who are impacting communities, right? So it was open, very, very broadly open. The only thing was we did, well, by definition, members of the security services, so members of the military and the Republic Police were not eligible for entry, but that's because in Zimbabwe they are not considered public servants, or civil servants rather.
The nominations are still open?
They close now.
Oh, sorry.
Nominations are closed now. Yeah.
So how were committees nominating the public officials?
How were they nominating?
How were you making them nominate when they don't need
So what we did was we did a press run earlier this year talking about the campaign. And then we also did a lot of work on Facebook. We did work on WhatsApp talking about the campaign as well. But it was low level, if I'm honest. Yeah. Are you wondering why you haven't heard of it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know what that is.
Yes, exactly.
I'm wondering how some of them are.
Yeah, so that means that we need to do more work in terms of media and raising awareness of the campaign, right? And that's also why we want to talk to you. That's why
You, not you specifically.
But all exactly. That's why you were here. We want you to know that it
He was
exists.
getting tricks.
I know you was. You got carried away. Yeah, now you're like, what? You are here.
But it's an annual campaign, so over time it will grow. Hopefully there'll be more awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and we've seen this in other countries. After it takes a few years to get going. It's small, and then in Nepal, for example, I think the first time we did it, we got a few hundred nominations, and then in year 3, suddenly it jumped to 1,000 because suddenly everyone had seen the films. We got some media coverage. People got excited. And we did a lot of outreach also with volunteers who went into communities with paper forms and got people to nominate and pass them to think about honest public officials. So I think it will grow over time.
My contribution will touch on a bit on what you said, what you're saying, in terms of media
Yeah.
coverage and awareness. Zimbabwe is a very political country, and we are prone to writing politics throughout the year. I think it would be very welcome if, for example, you're meeting an icon, an integrity icon, I don't know, Bembes, whoever. Is just take some of the journalists there so that at least they have no excuse not to write the story. And it's to be a very interesting story, not the usual.
That's true. Well, actually, our icons are due later if you want to come back. They're here at the offices. What time? At 2. So you are very welcome to meet them and to...
Unfortunately, it's true. I'm sure my colleagues will want to, the late Dr. Magaisa.
Yes.
There's an event in the circus. Unfortunately, but I'm sure even there are some stories around.
Yes, there's no, not Tutuza, but Harare definitely is not where it is, yeah. And then the other ones are from Kolomonzi and Blair. But we are also happy to set up a separate engagement if that is something that we are interested in doing.
Definitely.
Yes, and then we can meet the icons and you can talk to them one-on-one.
So what did that guy do?
That's Evamocha Kwizira. He's a headmaster at Chinika High School in Kolomonzi.
Oh.
So, Mr. Chabu, now Samuel will have more information than me about
You nominated him, you can tell us.
So Mr. Kwizera is the head of Chinika High School in Goromonzi. He was the 2021 Integrity Icon winner, People's Choice, because people were voting, and he garnered over 5,000 votes. Yeah, and he has transformed Chinika Secondary School, which is quite a rural school, and he has transformed it into a business model that allows the proceeds from that model to pay fees for kids from less privileged families in and around Koromonzi. So, and he's also instilled even the pass rate, because I joined the school, I think 3 or 4 years ago, and the pass rate was low back then, but he has managed to transform the school. And just recently, I think on Monday, the minister was at the school official opening a library that they built with their own resources, and resources coming from some of the projects. They are actually projects like the chicken project, a roadrunner project, a school, a uniform manufacturing unit. They also manufacture their uniforms, and they sell those to the community. And it's one of the schools that was given a tender by the ministry to manufacture face masks when COVID was at its peak. So you see the business model of it. And I think it's also in line with what government is calling for in terms of schools, because schools do not generate money. We witnessed that during COVID. Most of the schools were incapacitated, but the likes of Mr. Chapis managed to sell through. It's one of the schools where you can go as a teacher and get breakfast, courtesy of school, get lunch, courtesy of the school, because of income that they are generating from different projects.
Now imagine this kind of story.
Yeah, this is the
See?
This is the story.
But did she write it like what Sam said? Did she do that? Or did she just say there's this headmaster? There was no detail in that story.
2 pages of a story.
But we can always write it.
I know that's powerful. I now know why you nominated him.
Are there any further questions?
Yeah, I want to ask, what award as a distinguished icon given? Still mentioned value after the one award.
The value of the campaign is not in money, but in the networks that icon is then brought into, and also the work that we do with them to grow their influence and the work that they are doing to build integrity in their institution. So we have a tiny network of these 5, and over the next few years we're hoping to build it and increase it. But also with ourselves, because we are working to work with the government. We want to then be able to help that icon be able to create influence within their institution and within the broader structure, so that they are also able to talk to influence other public servants and say, hey, it works like this where I am. Maybe this is something that you can replicate or learn from.
Yeah, problem. Next time you shouldn't call government ministers to open a school, a block which they have built themselves. Because that is the reason why people go to the minister now.
I
Instead of
see,
using-
and not the...
Because the plaque will be written officially opened by
But of course it will be written officially opened by.
he should open it.
He was there too.
He deserves
He
it.
can't get all of the credit. The minister made it possible.
We shouldn't give credit where it's not true.
Yes.
Is it possible that we can get profiles of all those integrity icons?
Yes. I think we have portraits.
We have profiles and videos.
And maybe pictures.
Yes. And videos and pictures we have.
Because this is an interesting part of your work from where I'm sitting. Because it talks about the people.
Yes.
Rarely do you find public servants being rewarded for their work. If it's not their other teachers' bonuses. If we get their profiles in the national papers, in our online publications, I think it's more valuable
Yes.
than hiding their. You are being modest.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
And what did we go to?
That is Anesu Chingwa. She's a health promotions officer at Incubator Central Hospital in Blair. So what Anesu has done is she innovated the way patient care was being considered. So she didn't introduce, but she did help the institution adopt holistic patient care. So instead of just treating Ingucheni as the mental health institution, right? So instead of just treating the mental health aspects, they also then look at things like diet, things like exercise, so that the entire patient is being treated, not just the issue, the mental health aspect. Mr. Mtombiza at the back there, how are you?
I'm alright.
Thank you for coming.
My apologies, I was attending to something. So, can we also have integrity icon for the media?
Write more about integrity icon and we will definitely nominate you.
Who do you have in mind?
Me?
Okay. I'm going to close our formal program, but that doesn't mean that our conversation is over, right? Now you know where we are. You've seen our faces, so it's not hidden. It's not a secret anymore, right? So we can continue to talk and engage. I have all of your phone numbers, so I will be coming for you myself personally. And
You don't have yours.
I want 0737.
Wait. I got to know about accountability lab from, I think, one of the media startups where you were talking about.
Oh, yes.
So I'll always see accountability lab and I was like, I don't really know what's happening, but now I know.
Are you going to join our incubator soon?
I hope so.
I hope so. Yeah.
Give that number, please.
0737
07.
37 009 382. If you might see me in these groups, I'm just looking. But yes, thank you so much, everyone. Please stay and join us for some chats and to talk. I think we have snacks set up outside. Is that true?
China don't eat snacks.
You don't eat snacks?
They are about to go in.
I'm hurt, but it's okay.
Just speak for yourself.
So thank you so much, everyone. All right.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay.